Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether listening on your radio, streaming the show online, or listening through the app, whichever app you choose to use, as this is day 2 of this show, also being on 740 KVOR. So welcome. Those of you who are just discovering the program for the first time, hope you like it. Overall, pretty positive early returns. I at least had fun yesterday with the first show being on both Extra Sports 1300 and KVOR, and looking to continue to grow and interact with you. That is a big part of this program, and you can do it by texting or calling into the show at 719-247-1313. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you on the show. That's what I always say. And let us start with, I think, comparisons are hard. And to compare anything to winning a championship, I think it's not even worth the time. So let's put it this way. Last night was the most enjoyable Nuggets basketball game that I have seen in the regular season in years. Can't compare it to the Nuggets closing out the Miami Heat to win a title, or any of these big playoff performances by Jamal Murray or Nikola Jokic. But for a regular season game, I don't know that it's been a more enjoyable experience than last night. Because what you had was the Denver Nuggets without essentially their best 7 players. I know best is a subjective term, but let's look at it. Jokic was hurt. Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and Christian Brown were all resting on the second night of a back-to-back. Jonas Valanciunas is hurt. Cam Johnson is hurt. Tim Hardaway did not play either. The Nuggets were left with 9 guys who I think, and this is no knock on anybody that would fit into this group, that casual fans would not totally know who they are. Jalen Pickett, Hunter Tyson, Zeke Naji, Deron Holmes. These are the guys leading the Denver Nuggets. Oh, and there was Bruce Brown. That's a name that should resonate with a lot of people. The Nuggets were down to 9 players, all of which have very small roles, if any role, with the Denver Nuggets when they are fully healthy. And those 9 players came together on the second night of a back-to-back in the city of Philadelphia against a Sixers team that thinks they're a title contender, with Joel Embiid on the floor, with Paul George on the floor, both former All-Stars, one of which an MVP, with one of the league's brightest stars in Tyrese Maxey, and with a slew of very promising young talent like VJ Edgecombe. The Denver Nuggets had every excuse in the book to get absolutely run out of the gym last night. And yet, they won. And not just did they win, they went into overtime and beat Philadelphia, who wasn't missing anybody save for Kelly Oubre Jr. And why that is significant is because these players, as I mentioned, usually have very small roles, and as a group, they are very young. And as that game goes on, there's this feeling of house money right? They're just playing free and loose and having fun and taking advantage of an opportunity that they will not have again, maybe ever in their NBA careers. And then the pressure kind of swings to Philadelphia, right? The longer you let a team like that hang around, the more confidence they're going to have. But once that team, Philadelphia in this case, punches back, right? They settle themselves and they come back at the Denver Nuggets and take the lead. And eventually the game goes to overtime. That's when the pressure should actually shift back over to the Denver Nuggets. In the last few minutes of regulation, and especially the 5 minutes of overtime, that's when the clock was supposed to strike midnight. And the carriage was supposed to turn back into a pumpkin. Yeah, they had their fun. It was enjoyable. But now the Sixers have taken this game over. They have the lead, or they forced overtime. Now this is where they go away. And the Sixers end up winning. That did not happen. Clutch plays after clutch play down the stretch for this severely undermanned Denver Nuggets team, and they end up beating the Philadelphia 76ers, and now they need a nickname. Now they need a nickname because back in 2020, we had the Magnificent Seven. You remember 2020, what was going on at that time? Nuggets were severely undermanned. They went into Utah with only 7 players, pulled out a win. They posed for a photo on the team plane. It was one of the most enjoyable, to use the word I used earlier, Nuggets experiences in a very long time. It was just fun. But this needs a nickname, and it needs a good nickname. You know why? Because that win last night is better than the Magnificent Seven back in 2020. 2 of the 7 players that played in Utah in that game were Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Give me Nikola Jokic and 4 players, and I would take the Denver Nuggets most nights. They didn't have Jokic. They didn't have Murray. They didn't have Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, et cetera, et cetera. And these were a group of players, most of them, Jalen Pickett, Zeke Naji especially, those 2, that have been much maligned among the Nuggets fan base. And were a couple of points of contention between Calvin Booth, the former general manager, and Michael Malone, the former head coach, who butted heads constantly about the direction of the organization. And Josh Kroenke, the owner of the team, ended up having to fire them both because they were bickering too much. 2 of the players they were bickering over were Zeke Naji and Jalen Pickett. And those are the guys leading the way for the Denver Nuggets to win a game against a pretty good Philadelphia 76ers team. And not only did Jalen Pickett help lead the Denver Nuggets, the guy scored 29 points. He nearly dropped a 30-burger on the Philly 76ers. Zeke Naji had 21 off the bench. Zeke Naji has been an albatross around the neck of the Nuggets organization ever since Calvin Booth gave him a lucrative extension with no past history of production to warrant such a contract. So when you go through all the layers here, all the nuance, last night way better than back in 2020. So we need to come up with a nickname, and I'm not very good at this. I went, and maybe it's because I'm very excited for the new Christopher Nolan movie to come out, but I went like Greek mythology. The Ennead, that's Greek. It means group of 9. It sounds cool. That's what I went with. Got no traction on social media, but then again, nothing I say on social media gains any traction. Notorious 9. Seems like an obvious choice. Cloud 9's more of a headline in a newspaper than it is the name. I think Katie Winge of Altitude called them the Sublime Nine, which pretty good, but like lime and nine are not the same, right? So it's probably better than any of the ones I threw out there, but it doesn't fit as well. And the problem is movies, literature, they don't give us anything. Go ahead and look. There's just not a lot, but we got to figure out what that is and call them something. But for now, I'll just say that that's one of the most fun Nuggets wins in years. And with all of those players not a part of the game, the biggest reason why last night was so fun, if you're a Nuggets fan, expectation gone, pressure off. There's a little bit of a downside here. And if you're not really a Nuggets fan, but you're definitely a Broncos fan, you've started to experience this. As fun as it is when your team is winning, and that certainly trumps any potential negative that could come into play here. But when your team starts winning, the bar is raised. You deal with expectation. And the way that we talk about with the Denver Broncos is, they didn't win pretty enough. Right? They weren't as dominant as they should have been. There's a threshold that we cross as sports fans when our team hits a certain level of good that I don't want to say watching them is laborious, but there's much more opportunity to be disappointed in what you see than be excited or be heartened by what you see. But with all of those players out, that's gone. This is the team that took the floor last night in Philadelphia is not the Nuggets title contenders. They're not the Denver Nuggets 2023 NBA champions. They aren't the Denver Nuggets led by the best player in the world. They're just a bunch of dudes with Nuggets across their chest. Or maybe it was Denver. Home road. I think it's the city that's on the front. I should know this. But it's just a bunch of guys who you have no expectation for that have not, to be fair, other than Bruce Brown and Peyton Watson, haven't done a whole heck of a lot in a Nuggets uniform. All of a sudden having almost an out-of-body experience, which causes you as a fan to have the fan version of an out-of-body experience. I was sitting next to my son last night watching that game, and we were laughing. We were laughing at the mere fact, like we were laughing since midway through the third quarter. That Nuggets team was hanging around that long. And all of a sudden, there were all these points where you go, okay, now here's where Philly takes over. All right, it was fun while it lasted, and they just never did. Joel Embiid, what did he score last night? 32 points? It didn't matter. It wasn't enough. A guy, and make no mistake about it, the team that they beat makes this all the better if you're a Nuggets fan, right? Because you start to think back to those very toxic debates that were going on when Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic were vying for the MVP, and some of the noise that would make its way down from the Philadelphia area about what Nikola Jokic is or is not, and how much better Joel Embiid is than him. And to see a night where Joel Embiid is playing 40 minutes and the Nuggets don't even have Jokic, and Joel Embiid can't even lift the Philadelphia 76ers off of the Nuggets over the Nuggets G League squad, essentially. that just adds to it. So like I said, peel back every layer you want to. It almost gets better and better as you go along. And it's one of those nights, and we can get into this conversation a little bit later. But it's one of those nights that I would caution, don't make it bigger than what it is. That's the trap that you can fall into. And I've seen a lot of hot takes about what some of those players that played last night are and what they should be moving forward for the Denver Nuggets. The words more playing time have been thrown around all over Twitter in the last 24 hours. I would say that it could affect your enjoyment of what you saw last night if now you start to say, well, Jalen Pickett's got to be the sixth man. Peyton Watson's got to be paid. Take it for what it is. One night only. One glorious evening of basketball on January 5th. And then go back to counting the days until the Nuggets are fully healthy and together again. 719-24-7-1313. Take your thoughts on the Notorious 9 beating the Philadelphia 76ers last night. And by the way, the consequence of it, the Nuggets stave off their what I feel like might be an inevitable drop in the Western Conference for at least one more night. 719-24-7-1313. Coming up next, if you're the Denver Broncos, who do you hope comes out of Wild Card Weekend to be your opponent in round 2? All right, I like this. So what are we calling these guys? These 9 players that took down the Philadelphia 76ers last night in overtime. Clearly my suggestions are terrible, and that's okay. I expected them to be, given by the lack of reaction on social media. Ken called in. This is the one to beat, in my opinion, but I'll let you tell me. 719-247-1313. Ken said 9 of hearts. I like that because there was a lot of heart that was showcased last night by that Denver Nuggets team. So that was from Ken. Jerry Cross, the incomparable Jerry Cross of Colorado College fame. How about minor 9 or minor 9? So like minor, like you're mining for gold because Nuggets, or minor 9 as in their youth. Now, not, and or maybe it would be better for the roles that they played. I think that's probably what Jerry was going for there. All good suggestions. Very good suggestions. Keep them coming. 719-247-1313. Just one of those unexpected nights. You know, I was thinking, you know, sometimes in sports, you think that, you know what, I can just tune out of this game. I don't need to worry about it. And then you're going to read or see something later that you're like, man, I wish I would have watched that game. That was one of those for the Denver Nuggets last night. So as we move along, 719-247-1313, shifting gears to the Denver Broncos, waiting on their opponent in the divisional round. Douglas is called in and wants to give his take on what the preferred matchup for Denver might be. Douglas, pleasure to have you today, buddy. Who would you like to see the Denver Broncos play in round 2?
I would like to see the Broncos play the Buffalo Bills. I think the Bills would be a better matchup for Denver.
With Josh Allen?
Yes, because it's in Mile High Stadium, and Josh Allen barely played in Mile High Stadium before. He's rarely came into Denver, so this will be something of a challenge for him.
All right.
Especially with our loud crowd out there, it will be insane.
All right, I like it. Kind of a hot take, Douglas, but that is welcome on this show. Appreciate you calling. Call more often. That would be, for me, the least desirable matchup for the Denver Broncos. And in fact, there are 2 teams right now, knowing now that the Denver Broncos are going to be playing at home, right? Now that that's cemented. And I think that Douglas makes a great point, but that applies to every team. I mean, think about in a couple weeks if Drake May's coming in, what he's going to be walking into. He really has never experienced it. I'm kind of at the point where there are 2 teams that I think tomorrow I might take over Denver, even in Denver. And there's a third one that if I'm a Broncos fan, I would be a little bit worried about. And the coincidence of those 3 teams is that they are all the lower seeds this weekend. The 3 teams that I would, if I were ranking them, and I would rank them starting with the least wanting to play, would be Buffalo. Because I think Josh Allen and that Buffalo running game, and also, and this is more of a Buffalo thing than anything else, it's got to be this year, or when is it going to be for Buffalo? Like that urgency that they have there. So the running game, Josh Allen, and the if not now when for the Buffalo Bills organization, they're the least desirable matchup at any point. And it could be round 2, but it could be later than that as well. Buffalo is the last team that the Denver Broncos should want to play. In fact, Buffalo is the last team anyone in the AFC should want to play. There's always one, right? The team that nobody wants to play. For me in the AFC, it's Buffalo, hands down. Then it would be Houston. Houston, we saw that game, one of those typical Bronco games that was very close. CJ Stroud did not play for a majority of the game. I do think you have to say that CJ Stroud makes a difference, not ultimately flipping it Houston's way, but I think he makes a difference, certainly makes the Broncos' job tougher. The pass rush and the ability to get after Bo Nix without sending extra pressure allows Houston to sit back defensively and just watch Bo Nix's eyes and decide where he's going to go for the ball. Their ability to create pressure without committing extra numbers would be troublesome. And how good the Texans' offensive line is now, as opposed to what they were early on in the season. The sack numbers for CJ Stroud compared to last year and even compared to the beginning of this year till now have gone down a lot. And what's one of the big advantages Denver should have in any matchup? Their ability to get to the quarterback. So those are the ingredients that make Houston not the ideal candidate. And then I don't think that the Chargers would be an ideal candidate. I know they just won, but you understand what circumstances were around that game, who played, and especially who did not play. You get as close to equal footing with Sean Payton as far as coach versus coach with Harbaugh. To me, Justin Herbert has ultimately made the difference in these recent matchups between these two teams. And if there's one team that would be slightly less phased by everything Douglas just pointed out and how loud Mile High will be, it's a divisional opponent. Now, I get it. There's going to be another level that the fans are going to go to. It's playoff noise. It's playoff energy. I get all that. But the mere idea of going into Denver is not going to really bother the Chargers that much. So I think if by process of elimination, if nothing else, and this might end up being an obvious answer, I think the best case scenario for the Denver Broncos this weekend in the wild card round is that it's chalk. Is that all the home teams win? Because in the short term, you get Pittsburgh. And in the long term, even though the seedings are what they are, I feel strongly that the teams at 5, 6, 7 could be a little bit more problematic for Denver than the teams at 2, 3, 4. Kind of weird to say that, given that the seedings are the seedings, and Patriots are supposed to be the second best team, and the Jaguars, and so on and so forth. But it's about matchups, especially in the AFC, where there's no dominant team. There's no, of course, it's this one. Then it just becomes, when it's the playing field is so evened out like it is, who you play matters. How you match up against these teams matter. Yeah, maybe the Chargers aren't better than the Patriots. But I think the Chargers could be a more problematic matchup for the Denver Broncos than New England would be. So best case scenario for this weekend is that it goes chalk and the Denver Broncos draw the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if you're into more cosmic things, think about this. A Denver Broncos team that is led by a dominant defense, that there are, let's say, questions about the quarterback position, goes into a postseason with home field. And in their first game, they play the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then in the AFC Championship, they happen to draw the New England Patriots. And the winner of that game would then go on to play a Super Bowl that ends in a 0, by the way, in Santa Clara. If you're into that kind of stuff, it being chalk this weekend wild card round might be the best thing as well. I think that the Steelers are quite obviously the preferred matchup. Not to say that the Broncos can't get by any other opponent, but if there's a rooting interest, if there's a let's ease into these playoffs, and I think it's got to be Pittsburgh. And all the top seeds this weekend win. I'll take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Coming up next, breaking news out of the National Football League. Speaking of the Steelers, or more accurately, the team they just ended their season, there's some news. Get to that next. Workshopping names for Peyton Watson and the rest of the Denver Nuggets, all 9 of them in total, that somehow, some way took down the Philadelphia 76ers last night in overtime. Entries into the running here. The minor 9 could make it a pun on gold mining or the roles that these guys normally play. 9 of hearts. Some that have come in here. This from the 719. Undeniable. That to me is kind of like Cloud9, though, isn't it? Isn't that like, it's good, but is it better used as a headline? Like, I could see it in the Gazette. Undeniable. And Brett says the 9 lives. The Ennead, anybody? Anybody into Greek or Egyptian mythology? Ennead, group of 9? No? Okay. I'll leave it to you guys for the rest of the show here. Notorious 9. I thought that was easy, low-hanging fruit, but I did tweet it out last night. Continue to take your thoughts on that and kind of moving that story to the next step. What does this mean moving forward based on what you saw last night? That's coming up. Some of your, I want to pay off the tease of breaking news. The Baltimore Ravens have fired John Harbaugh. Now, I said this yesterday. I said 2 teams that don't just assume they're not making a move. It was Tampa and it was Baltimore. And I thought that, one, when you're going to fire Todd Bowles, and especially when you're going to fire John Harbaugh, you better take more than one sleep on it. Right? You better take your time. But also perhaps a level of respect to not throw in those 2 very well-respected head coach into, with all due respect to the rest of the guys fired, into that mess. Right? All those, like with Stefanski and Gannon and these guys who haven't accomplished a great deal, like John Harbaugh is a Super Bowl winning head coach. Not throwing him in with that group, taking your time and coming to a decision. And look, I think it's the right one. And I could copy and paste exactly what I'm about to say to if the Pittsburgh Steelers would have lost that game on Sunday night. There comes a time where you just can't worry about, oh, this dude's going to be scooped up immediately. Oh, we can't let this guy walk out on us. Now, I understand there's a Pittsburgh-Baltimore dynamic at play. And if you're Baltimore, you don't want Harbaugh going to the Steelers and vice versa. You don't want Tomlin going to Baltimore. But in the grander sense, you can't worry that, you know, you fire John Harbaugh and he's going to end up coaching the Raiders next year. Like, you got to make the best decision for you. You can't be gripped by fear. Clearly, the Baltimore Ravens, as we have known them, have run their course. We are done here. The Baltimore Ravens, led by the partnership between John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson, has gone as far as they are possibly going to go. And if I'm choosing one or the other, I'm keeping Lamar. This is the right call from the Ravens. But The pressure that they now put on themselves, they better get this right. And I'm sure that was a part of their decision making. Right? Who can we get that is better? Because that's the question that is going to be asked in Baltimore and in NFL circles for the next few weeks, while we're filling time between reacting to playoff games and previewing playoff games. That question is going to be asked. Who do you get that's better? I don't know if there's somebody that's better. And I'll give you a local example. The best scenario that I concocted after Michael Malone got fired was to get Steve Kerr and Bob Myers in Denver. Admittedly, a pipe dream. If you're a Nuggets fan, it was not going to happen. But if we're thrown out in an ideal world, here you go. So in an ideal world for Baltimore, it would be Andy Reid feels like his time in Kansas City has come and gone. It's time to hand the reins over, but he's not done coaching, so he goes to Baltimore. Or Sean McVay, who it's been rumored is, has had an eye on maybe retirement, or maybe he's not long. He just decides, you know what? I've done all I can do in LA. Let me try a different challenge. Or he retires early and then the Ravens able to coax him out of retirement. There are some really pie in the sky ideas here and you're going to see these thrown out. But let's deal in a little bit of reality, shall we? The Baltimore Ravens will not end up hiring a coach that you would say unequivocally is better than John Harbaugh. I don't foresee how that is going to happen. But that is not a reason. That should be something considered, but it should not be the ultimate reason why you don't make a move like this. And again, the Denver Nuggets are a great example. The fear was, Michael Malone's going to get a job tomorrow. Still working for ESPN. David Adelman. Now, they had the luxury of seeing how the team responded to David Adelman, but there's no world where David Adelman right now is a better head coach than Michael Malone. But with that evidence that you saw during the playoffs, it lent itself to, maybe David Adelman's not a better coach than Michael Malone, but he's the right coach for this team right now. And even though the resume of the guy that will most likely succeed, John Harbaugh, is not as impressive as John Harbaugh's, it could still very well be the right man for the job right now. So I think that the Baltimore Ravens made the right decision here. This has run its course. You got to change up something. Now the question becomes, and this is the more interesting question to me, what kind of job is the next guy coming to? What are the Ravens going to look like? Is this it? They just say, we need a different voice. That's it. That's all. And then obviously this offseason, we try to improve our team through the draft and free agency. Or is there something much bigger that's going to happen with Baltimore? Because while we were all celebrating the holidays, a little piece came out in Baltimore, in the Baltimore paper, that chronicled how many in the organization have started to sour on Lamar Jackson. And it was a lot of stuff. I mean, it was, especially if you're a Lamar Jackson fan, you could characterize it as a hit piece. It was not a lot about Lamar Jackson's playoff failures or his ability as a quarterback. It was, his demeanor, his body language, the way he shows up. Much was made about how frustrated he was about his kicker missing a kick to lose the game and eliminate them from the playoffs, a situation that I feel like many people would be quite frustrated in the moment. Of course, that wasn't in the piece, but you had the piece, and then you saw how Lamar reacted after the Ravens lost that game. I have read enough of those pieces to say this is coming straight from the organization, sending up a trial balloon to see how people would react to what the inevitable conversation would be. Do the Ravens need to move on from Lamar Jackson? That's what that piece that came out a week or so ago signaled to me. Is that someone in the Ravens organization, I don't know how high up, I would say pretty high up, wants to get public comment without actually coming out and saying, hey, we're thinking about trading Lamar Jackson. What do you think, townspeople? That is going to be the question moving forward. Are they hiring Lamar Jackson's next head coach, or is this the start of the Ravens getting themselves a clean slate and starting over again? Because whatever you could get for Lamar Jackson, regardless of what that piece in the Baltimore paper said, you're going to get a king's ransom for this guy. You just are. And I can sit here and say we've evolved in our thinking when it comes to quarterbacks, and you shouldn't, especially here, Russell Wilson, that whole experiment, Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. I promise you, somebody is willing to give up everything to get Lamar Jackson. And we could debate whether that team is right or wrong in that. But there will be a team out there, and all you need is one. The Baltimore Ravens would be able to get a healthy amount of assets in return to jumpstart a rebuild. That is what needs to be monitored from today on. Is this the start, or is them saying we're going to give it one more go with Lamar and see if a different voice leading the team is what we need? I think Lamar Jackson is a Baltimore Raven next year. That's what my gut is telling me. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that this is the first step to a complete teardown in Baltimore. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, talk about the Denver Broncos and why they are here as the number one seed, and something that did come up on Sunday that could be a sign of good things to come for the Broncos in the playoffs. Welcome in hour 2 on this Tuesday. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300 or 740 KVOR, which will be the homes of this show moving forward in the year 2026. You can also watch the show on a daily basis on social media platforms for both radio stations. So even more so, if there's any desire, any inkling you have to consume this show at any point on any day, you can find it at 740 KVOR on social media, at Extra Sports 1300. Pick your favorite platform. We're there. And while you're there, like, subscribe, and most importantly, comment, as I want this to be as interactive an experience as possible. And in fact, speaking of, some text still on the text line at 719-247-1313 that I will absolutely get to on the topic of who would you rather the Broncos played in the divisional round. I say it's got to be Pittsburgh, not just because they are perceived to be the weakest team in the AFC. I think with how even this playing field is in the AFC and how wide open it is, how you match up with the team matters even more. None of these teams are just going to overwhelm the other one with their talent. It's about how you match up, and I think given the potential teams, because they would not play Jacksonville or New England no matter what, of every other team that they could play, I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers are the best matchup. And I'll take your thoughts on that at 719-247-1313. Now, as we continue to assess and understand why the Denver Broncos are where they are, obviously a big reason is the play of the defense this year. Not that different than the last time that the Denver Broncos were a high seed going into the postseason. Pat Surtain obviously being the head of that, and he had some intriguing things to say after the Broncos wrapped up home field. He was happy they won home field, but says there's a little bit more that this Broncos team can do.
Be glad we got home field advantage, you know what I mean? Because you need as much of an advantage, going into the playoffs. And that's a huge part of it, securing the number 1 seed and getting home field advantage. So that's big time for us. But, I feel like we're not a finished product. We're not, where we want to be yet. But like I said before, I feel like we're very dangerous knowing that we got home field advantage right in front of us.
Pat, over here.
Be glad we got.
The part there that I wanted to key on was the not a finished product yet. And I think there's a couple of different meanings behind what Pat Surtain said. I think one is more about the mindset of this Denver Broncos team. And the most famous example of this was Sean Payton calling the division champion gear ugly. Right? Sean Payton has it drilled into the heads of his players that this isn't the biggest thing. Why are you stopping to celebrate? There's this other thing. Continuing to have this team looking forward. A growth mindset plays along with that. Right? Because I think part of the message that Sean Payton delivers to his team is not only that we have bigger games, right? That's what Sean Payton has said over and over. We'll play in bigger games. But I think the next thing that he says is in order to win those bigger games, we got to be better than we were in this game. So he constantly has these players striving to be better and never being satisfied with either their accomplishment or how good they are playing. Sean Payton has convinced this team that there is another level that they can go every single week. And I'm sure that's part of the message this week. And that's part of what Pat Surtain is referring to. The idea that is planted in the Broncos' head that they're always capable of more than they have shown. But I think from a practical standpoint, you could actually see it. It's one thing to sit here and say, well, yeah, we all in our lives want to strive to be better. Are there actually places where we can be better? There is a very clear and obvious one for this Broncos defense as well as they have played this season. It's forcing turnovers. This is not a new storyline for this team. It's been discussed for weeks, nay, months. This team, for all of what they do, for all of the games they won, for all of the sacks that they have compiled, one piece of the puzzle they have yet to fully put into place is the ability to consistently create turnovers. And maybe it doesn't have to be plural. I go back to the Green Bay game and the interception that Pat Surtain had. Yeah, more turnovers in that game would have certainly helped the Broncos cause more. But that one interception in a crucial part of the game completely flipped it the Broncos' way. Pat Surtain had another play similar to that earlier in the season last year against the Raiders. That pick six he had, I thought not only turned that game around, it may have set the Broncos on a different trajectory for that season. Because could you imagine the blow to the confidence of the Denver Broncos if they would have lost to their division rival Raiders that early in the season? So when we talk about the Denver Broncos' necessity to create turnovers, and it can be pluralized, it's more about at least getting one at a pivotal point. Not always, hey, here's this third down again. We got to stop them here and we force them to punt. That's how or in the red zone, we bend, but we don't break and they settle for a field goal. That's a win for us. They need to have more decisive wins over the offense. And I've pointed out how down the stretch of the season, some cracks have started to form. It looks like a Broncos defense that is starting to get a little bit run down. And they had this happen to them last year, and you saw what happened in the first round of the playoffs. I'm seeing some of the same signs. A Broncos defense that, as good as they are, stays on the field a lot. Allows a lot of long drives that don't, to their credit, end up in touchdowns. And one way they can help themselves, there's the other side of the football, obviously, with Bo Nix and company, that could do more to help out the defense. But what can the defense control? Turning opponents over. And it was Trey Lance, I grant you, but the Broncos forcing multiple turnovers, that hasn't happened a lot this season. And I think even with the level of competition taken into account, there's something that the Broncos can do even against better competition than Trey Lance. You know, Sean Payton mentioned something the week leading up to the Jacksonville game on why Jacksonville was so good at creating turnovers. And it has stuck with me. And it's so simplistic, but it's also at the same time kind of novel. Their defensive backs can catch the ball. I know, right? Sounds like a no-duh statement. But we don't factor that in a lot on why teams don't create turnovers. We think about it's coverage and it's pressure and it's this and it's that, and it is those things too. But sometimes it just comes down to, do you have a defensive back or a linebacker that can actually catch the ball? Because it's not like the Broncos haven't deflected passes. It's not like opposing quarterbacks haven't thrown the ball in a terrible spot where the Broncos can go get it. But how many times this season has the ball just gone through the hands of a Broncos defender? There was one, they should have had really 3 turnovers against the Chargers. What about Riley Moss? Riley Moss had a easy interception that he couldn't get. So I don't know how much you can improve your hands in a short amount of time. But practicing would help, and having a week off where you're not preparing for a game might be a good time for the Broncos linebackers and DBs to be standing in front of a jugs machine and trying to catch footballs. But also, too, there's a way, and I saw this with Riley Moss. Didn't look like to you that Riley Moss was trying to take that interception to the house before he actually caught it? And Pat Surtain mentioned when he was asked about Jaquan McMillan's pick 6, the idea that they've talked amongst themselves that they should all do that, right? We should intercept it and take it to the house. Why not? And that's great. Like, believe in yourself. But how about just start with securing the interception, and if the opportunity arises, try to take it to the house? I have seen Riley Moss and some other players for the Broncos perhaps at times looking to see where the seam they could run through is before they actually have the football. And then for, fumbles, you saw it with Nick Bonito. Just take that club of a fist and punch. Right? That's also something that Sean Payne talked about that Jacksonville does. They're taught to punch the ball out. They work on it. They're skilled at it. You can't tell me that the collection of talent that the Broncos have defensively, that none of these guys are capable of punching the ball out or catching a pass from an opposing quarterback. I don't believe that. Maybe they're not prolific. Maybe they're all not Pat Surtain. So there are little things that they can do, and I think Sean Payton and Vance Joseph are preaching it. They're working on it. But it takes time. And maybe it's something that emerges a little bit late, because there will come a time in these playoffs where the Denver Broncos don't just need to stop on third down to force a punt. They need to turn the other team over. And there will be multiple opportunities throughout this postseason for them to take it away. They're not going to go up against a bunch of quarterbacks who are going to place every ball only where their receiver can get it. There will be opportunities for turnovers in these playoffs, and there will be moments where the Broncos defense can't just be okay with batting a pass down or the pass being incomplete. And I look at the Green Bay game as a perfect example, and I even look at Sunday. I mean, what would that game have looked like if not for Jaquan McMillan's pick 6? I mean, do the Broncos lose that game without? But is it 19-3? No, it might be 10-3. If you factor in, too, Nick Bonito's punch out that led to a field goal. This Broncos team will need those if they're going to get to where they want to go. And it's something that Sean Payton has talked about, and it goes to what Pat Surtain's referring to in terms of them not being a finished product. This defense, it's really nitpicky. I mean, we got to be honest. We really nitpick the heck out of this Broncos defense, but that comes along with being great, right? This has been one of the best units in the National Football League. So now just doing the normal stuff isn't that impressive. Oh, the Broncos got more sacks. Yeah, it's a little old hat when you have 75 or whatever they ended up with this year. What's the next thing? What's the next level? If this Broncos team is going to have to elevate their game in order to get through the postseason, which they will, there's something that each part of the game, each side of the football, if you will, understand that there's a third phase, a third side of the game, if you will, which is special teams. All of those units are going to have to elevate their game in some way. The defense doesn't have much room to go. Right? They're kind of at where they need to be. But this is where they can be better. This is where they can elevate their game. And you saw a little bit more of it down the stretch of the season, the Green Bay game and Sunday against the Chargers. 719-24-7, 13-13. Speaking of the Broncos defense, the guy who is leading the Broncos defense has gotten more than a few looks or more than a few interviews for a head coach. So how worried should the Broncos be about losing Vance Joseph? We'll get into that topic as we proceed here on Extra Sports 1300 and proudly now on 740 KVOR. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to call or text into the show. Let me get to some texts. We've covered a lot of ground, and we'll reset things at the top of the hour with what's driving the show. But couple of the big topics that are driving the conversation right now, the Ravens firing John Harbaugh. What does this mean for Lamar Jackson? And then also, if you had your druthers, who would you have the Denver Broncos play in the divisional round now that the wild card matchups are set? New England and Jacksonville, you don't have to worry about that. Whether you're confident in them winning a matchup with those teams or not, they can't play them. Steelers, Texans, Bills, Chargers. I say Steelers would be the ideal matchup. Bills would be the least ideal matchup. And I'll hold up the Bills in perpetuity. At any point that the Bills are playing the Denver Broncos, that would be the most problematic matchup for them. In my opinion, here's what you have to say at the 719. My hope is for them to play Pittsburgh. I think that would be to our advantage, but I don't think Pittsburgh is going to get past the onslaught of Houston's defense. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a really long day against that defense. If he does get past that defense, then I'm a little worried. And that's an interesting thing. Would you be, we could sit here and look at all these teams, but how would the perspective about those teams change based on how they perform? To wit, what if Aaron Rodgers slings it around the yard against the Houston Texans defense? Would playoff Rodgers have reemerged? And would you suddenly say, yeah, I'd rather not? It's a great point. Right now, I think the answer is Pittsburgh. Haven't got much pushback on that. I've got more pushback on what would be the least ideal matchup. But we watch Wild Card Weekend play out, and maybe some teams, Steelers feel like, they shouldn't be here, right? Like they should have lost that game. They're only here because someone had to win the AFC North, like all that kind of stuff. Well, what if they go out and take it to the NFL's hottest team in the Houston Texans? How much would that change your perspective? But right now, I think the texter and I are in agreement that the way that the Broncos match up with these teams, Pittsburgh would be the ideal matchup. Alex says, I think the Texans are the scariest matchup for Denver. Defense wins championships, and the Texans have the best defense aside from the Broncos. The Broncos team will need to do like they did in 2015 if they will win a Super Bowl and rely on the defense. Sean Payne's offense is anemic. We did get into that topic yesterday about the offense and the way an anemic is an appropriate word to further explain what that means, what's happening right now. And I'm not explaining it to you, Alex, you see it, but just for anybody else. The way teams are playing the Denver Broncos now, they're taking away that shortcut. The Broncos offense throughout this year, I think for the most part, you would say, if you want to be hypercritical about it, you would agree with Alex and say they're anemic. Or you would say that they are, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, or very meticulous, or, that they like to run the football, easy throws for Bo Nix, short yardage, catch and run, like all that kind of stuff. Label it however you want to label it. That's what they normally do. However, Bo Nix has attempted some of the most deep passes of any quarterback in the league. That's the shortcut I'm talking about. Yeah, the Broncos want to run the ball. Yeah, the Broncos want to make it easy on Bo Nix. But every once in a while, and not even every once in a while, more regularly than that, Sean Payton will be like, all right, let's dial it up. Either because plan A isn't working or just in terms of layering play calls and the art of play calling, you lure a team in and then you hit them over the top. Defenses are saying, we're not going to let them do that. 2 high safeties, zone defense, we're looking right at Bo Nix. We're not going to be caught with our back turned to him in case Sean Payton dials up the deep ball. It's what you saw Jacksonville do to great success. Kansas City did it on Christmas and was successful. Now there are nuanced differences, but the ideas behind it are the same. What they're doing is virtually the same. And then the Chargers did it. And if teams continue to do it, and unless Bo Nix elevates, and really is able to sit back and pick apart teams, it is going to be a little bit of a slog for the Denver Broncos offense. They're going to be in a little bit of mud. They're going to have to lean more into their identity, be more patient with the run game. Maybe they can run Bo Nix a little bit more, but they're not going to be able to air it out. Teams just have said, we're not going to let them do that. If you're going to go 3 to 5 yards at a time on us, okay. We'll take our chances that at some point Bo Nix either makes a mistake or the defense or the drive stalls out. That shortcut to like 3 yards, 2 yards, 3 yards, or all of a sudden 20. Teams aren't going to aren't going to let them. That really depends on who they match up with. But that's what's happening with the Broncos offense right now. An offense that was not believed to be incredibly dynamic to begin with is even less so, or even more or less dynamic over the last few weeks. But the symmetry between the Super Bowl 50 year and this one, I laid it out. Potential road to the Super Bowl, which is held in Santa Clara, Pittsburgh, New England. Defense leading the way. I still think at some point we're going to be looking at Bo Nix and say, you got to make a play here. Is that as soon as next weekend? Maybe. Again, depending on the matchup. But in the next potential 3 games, there will be a time where you look at Bo Nix and you say, it's got to be you. Can't be the defense. It's got to be you. And is he going to be up for that particular moment? I think that is the biggest question facing the Denver Broncos going into this postseason. Tom, on the topic of John Harbaugh, almost called him Jim. I'm sure that happened a lot to them growing up. Tom says, Ravens are idiots. Lamar was hurt all year. How can you say Ravens made the right call when you can't name someone better than Harbaugh, except pipe dream coaches? Who are you going to hire? Again, you can't. You also have to take into account where your team is. Again, the Nuggets as an example. David Adelman is not a better coach than Michael Malone. He doesn't have the track record. That's what I'm saying when I say better. I'm saying a coach that has accomplished as much as John Harbaugh. They're not going to find it. And if they hire a first-year coordinator, no one is going to say this guy is a better head coach than John Harbaugh because you don't know. That's when I say they can't hire anybody better, but that's Steelers syndrome. that you're talking about. The Steelers have been plagued by this for years. We can't do better than Tomlin. So despite us being in the same spot every year and our season ending the same way, we're not going to move on from Mike Tomlin because we can't bring in somebody that's more accomplished than Mike Tomlin, that's considered a better coach than Mike Tomlin. Sometimes that's not a good reason. Sometimes you need a culture change. Sometimes you need a fresh set of eyes, a fresh set of ideas. But, okay, let's talk about the timing of this. John Harbaugh is fired now in a season that, as you point out, Lamar Jackson has been hurt and banged up. Ravens still had a game to be able to get into the postseason. And last time I checked, Lamar Jackson does not play defense. And a huge issue for Baltimore is the defensive side of the football. Could bringing in a Vance Joseph type be what they need? With Monken and Lamar Jackson, they feel like offensively they're where they need to be. We just get Lamar Jackson healthy and we'll be good on that side. We need somebody to get more out of this other side of the football than John Harbaugh can. We need a defensive mind. Because offense, we're good. Lamar gets healthy, we're fine. So you can't just say the person we hire win a blind resume test against the guy we have now. This is, I mean, the Denver Nuggets issues were a little bit more out there for everyone to see. But the fact that this piece comes out about Lamar Jackson a week or so ago tells me that there's an organization that is a little bit fractured right now. Does John Harbaugh have no responsibility in that? Sometimes you just need a different voice. Sometimes you need a fresh set of ideas. Sometimes you need someone with a different skill set. That's why right now I do think is the right move. Now, what you're saying lends credence to my idea that I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to get dealt this offseason because he's been hurt. But the Ravens' problems go beyond an unhealthy Lamar Jackson. And there's no guarantees they bring in somebody and get more success. But I think that it's become abundantly clear in Baltimore that they are going to go no further. Because if you don't want to take this year into account, take last year. Oh, but Mark Andrews normally catches it. Yeah, okay. How about the year before that? You have an MVP caliber quarterback. Not even caliber. You have a multiple-time winning MVP. How are you not in the Super Bowl? Sure, completely overhauling the Ravens roster with better players at every position would be another way to potentially improve it, but they don't have that option, so you fire the head coach. And time will tell. I think it's the right call. The Ravens think it's the right call. Tom doesn't think it is. Sure, a lot of people think that John Harbaugh will be hired tomorrow. And the Ravens will have made a mistake, and only time will tell who is right. 719-24-7. 1313, this coming in from the 719. Rex Ryan's updating his resume for the Baltimore job. Oh, God, he's going to be campaigning for that on TV, isn't he? Not that I watch any show that he's on. Oh, yeah, Rex. Yeah, that's a good point. Rex Ryan is going to be openly campaigning for that gig. No, That would not, if we're going to get into the business of throwing out potential suitors for the job, Rex Ryan, not one of them. Just, I want to be on the record for that. More Drive Time Sports right after this. Great conversation going on this edition of Drive Time Sports. Whether it's the Ravens firing John Harbaugh, ideal matchup for the Denver Broncos in the divisional round, or just the conversation surrounding where the Denver Broncos could go now that they have clinched the number 1 seed. 719-247-1313 is the number to reach out and be a part of the show, as Mr. Ed has done. Sir, the floor is yours. What do you got?
Hey, Ryan. Good to hear from you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
Yeah, real quick on the, people always want a new coach or a new quarterback. And I often think, that's fine, but the coaching regime is kind of getting like the quarterbacks. Who out there is better, and always think about that. Who would you want in here? Because it's starting to become such a short list on quarterbacks in the NFL and coaches, other than, stealing from the college ranks, which is, you're unproven. But I just often think, before you start thinking you want a new coach and all that, every now and then you'll get a retread that works for your team. But I often think, before you do that, it's starting to get slim, on the NFL coaching ranks and like quarterbacking in the NFL ranks. People talk about, we want a new quarterback. Well, then who would you want? Because there's not a lot to choose from.
And that's fair. And that's what the Ravens and other teams have to weigh here. Do you think that the Ravens are making a mistake by firing John Harbaugh?
Yeah. I think they are, because with him and their quarterback, I would give it another year or another 2 years, and then go from there. But I don't know who else they would hire, to come in and get along with Lamar Jackson and go from there. I don't get it, and I'm not an NFL owner, but yeah. So,
well, hey, you know what, with and Sean Payton would agree with me on this. With some of the NFL owners that we have, I would say that you operate at a higher level of football intelligence than some of these guys do. So don't sell yourself short. You don't have the money perhaps to be an owner, but I think you would certainly be more capable than some of these. Jimmy Haslam in Cleveland is one that immediately comes to mind.
And you're exactly right, and when you do that, you disrupt the whole team, not just, one or two people here, but like I say, who are you going to hire? You're going to hire a retread from another team that somebody didn't want, or you're going to pull from the college ranks that, he's unproven. So it's like, I don't know. I just, to me, it's like I would think hard and serious about that. And I know a few coaches got fired today, but that's here nor there. But then I have a take on the Broncos. As far as, to be the best, you got to beat the best. I don't care who they put in front of us. Well, I hate that. Let's play this team or this team or this team. We got a better chance of this team. No, just bring whoever's they bring into Mile High. We'll play them, and then there's no questions asked.
Well, then are you of the mind that it doesn't matter? Like, I get what you're saying about, hey, you don't want any shortcuts. You want the best teams coming in there. And I think that's a great mentality to have as a coach, a player, or a fan. But do you think that there is not a team in the AFC that can beat the Denver Broncos?
Oh, I'm very worried about a few teams, believe me. Just because of the team we have this year, and I get it. I love the Denver Broncos. I bleed orange and blue, but I get this team, and it seems like, I'm skeptical of our offense. Our defense is opportunistic, and it seems we do whatever we do to pull out a game, but it's not like I just feel confident, we can, whatever team comes in here, we can beat. But I just, I just don't want any questions, unresolved when people say, if you'd have played us, or, then, no, whoever it is, bring it in. And if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't. But I don't want no, games unanswered. Yeah.
Well, I'll say this, and I'm just pulling out a random team, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a fan of this team. You don't have to go through Kansas City. There will be that question asked. Oh, maybe that's just me. Ed, appreciate you calling in. Please call more often. Yeah, look, we don't want to spin things too forward here, but I would be curious. Right now, it's about how it's wide open and it's great and everybody's got a shot and you can make a case for anybody. I wonder if the lack of that team, right? And you know who that team is? It's Kansas City. Did they deserve to make the playoffs? No, that's not what we're discussing. They don't even have some of the excuses that other teams do for why they miss the playoffs. But like this idea that it's wide open there will be, I know there will be, but how many people will discredit Denver or New England? Because some of the same stuff that's being discussed about the Broncos and their schedule and who have they beaten, same thing with New England, right? Clear on the other side of the country, they're having the same conversations about New England. I wonder if the AFC, I'll make this prediction immediately. More people will pick whoever comes out of the NFC, and I'm doing this blind. I don't know who's coming out of either conference. More people will take the team out of the NFC because they will be perceived as more battle-tested, more well-rounded, and just a better overall football team. But there will be along the way some, well, they didn't have to do this. They didn't have to do that. The very thing that Mr. Ed is trying to combat against. It's going to happen anyway. And I think the way I'll put it is, I think in some way, if you're a Broncos fan, if they do end up getting out of the AFC, winning a Super Bowl, or even not winning a Super Bowl, you should want to see, I know they're the rival. I know I'm going to say this and no one's going to agree with me, but deep down, you know this to be true. You want to see the Broncos go head-to-head on the biggest stage against Kansas City in all their resplendent glory. You want them to get better. Only so you could strike them down. Because, Joe Burrow went through Kansas City. And I'll say this for the Broncos, but New England and any of these teams, there will be a conversation of, well, Kansas City's going to bounce back. Could this team beat Kansas City? And we did the same thing with the Patriots. It's the exact same thing. This is not just because of my affinity for that organization. But I think that's healthy. Bring them on, whoever it is. But there are some teams that could beat the Denver Broncos. And as a fan, you don't want the Broncos to lose. So they're going to play a good football team. I don't think any of the teams that win this weekend are going to be labeled as bad. It will be Justin Herbert, got the monkey off his back. Trevor Lawrence, he's back to being an elite quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, playoff Rodgers is back. The Houston Texans the hottest team in the NFL. They're a runaway train right now. And then Buffalo. Oh, they figured it out. They were just messing around during the regular season. That's all it is. They were just joking around. Any team that the Broncos end up playing is going to be a good team. So that's where my assertion that matchups matter more comes into play. Because any one of these teams are going to be quality. But how they match up with Denver, I think makes a big difference. 719-247-1313. Continue to take your thoughts on that. Who would you like to see the Broncos play? Maybe it's just entertainment value. Maybe you just want to watch Josh Allen play at Mile High like Douglas called in earlier. But who would you like to see the Broncos play in the divisional round? Coming up next, we'll reset things with the 3 stories that are driving the show. Big news out of Baltimore. And we'll continue to try and find a name for the group of Nuggets that pulled off the improbable last night. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Hello there. Welcome in hour 3 on this Tuesday, day 2, being simulcast on 740 KVOR. And if that's where you are listening today, whether it's on air, online at kvor.com, or through the KVOR app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all, I very much appreciate your patronage. Coming up, scheduled to be joined by Adam Carolla. Very funny human being, and he has parlayed that into a long and illustrious career in comedy. And he will just so happen to be in our backyard this weekend at Looney's here in Colorado Springs. So Adam will be my guest at 5:30 is when he is scheduled to join me. In the meantime, it's you and me at 719-247-1313. Avs getting ready to drop the puck against the Tampa Bay Lightning. No Gabriel Landeskog, no Devon Taves, no Mackenzie Blackwood. But even with that being said, it's still not as bad as the injury situation with the Denver Nuggets. Although, is it really a problem anymore? That leads me into the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right, story number 1, no Jokic, no Murray, no Brown, no Cam Johnson, no Jonas Valanciunas, no Tim Hardaway, no problem.
Here we go. 5.3 seconds left. Denver leads it by 1. Philadelphia needs a bucket for the win. Inbound over to Maxey. Maxey has it at the point. 2 seconds to go. Floater. Missed it at the horn! And what a miracle! The Denver Nuggets, with a ragtag team, stunned the Philadelphia 76ers in overtime. 125 to 124.
Altitude Radio on the call. You heard it on Extra Sports 1300 last night. What a ragtag group it was. 29 points for Jalen Pickett. 21 for Zeke Naji. Is this real life? It is. And it is the most fun Nuggets win that has occurred in the regular season in years. Maybe dating back to that Magnificent 7 win back in 2020 against the Utah Jazz. Not only were the best 7 players the Nuggets have, arguably, some people may like Peyton Watson somewhere in that 7, but missing 7 of their top 8 or their top 7 best players to be able to beat a team with a former MVP in Joel Embiid, a multiple-time All-Star in Paul George, one of the rising stars of the league in Tyrese Maxey, and a really promising rookie in VJ Edgecombe. That's wild. And the fact that it was the Sixers that they beat, I think makes it, as a Nuggets fan, even better given the discourse surrounding Embiid and Jokic a few years ago. But it was remarkable to see what that group of Nuggets players did. But one thing that I have seen a lot of out of that game is people not appreciating what last night was on its own merit and not trying to make more of it than there needs to be. This is not the time to say, oh, Calvin Booth was right. Look at Jalen Pickett. He was right all along. Malone didn't play these guys. That's why the Nuggets didn't have the depth they needed. Oh, Jalen Pickett needs more time now on the floor. Zeke Naji needs to play more. That's not what this is. They were hired, even with Calvin Booth believing in them. If Michael Malone didn't, that's one thing. Calvin Booth believed in them. But even then, Calvin Booth drafted them to be backups, to not play 42 minutes as Jalen Pickett did, to not be arguably the best player on the floor. He hired them to be role players, to be depth players, and those are the roles that these guys have struggled to be able to fill. I think you need to look at last night for what it was. And it was just a bunch of guys that don't normally get an opportunity that got an opportunity. Obviously, they're talented. They're in the NBA. Okay, and every single one of them would absolutely destroy you or I in a game on one-on-one. There is talent on the court for the Denver Nuggets last night. But they were also young guys getting an opportunity to play as many minutes without any chances of them getting pulled, that just got to go out there and show what they could do. It was like a contract year for every single one of them. Right? We say be wary of guys that perform well in a contract year. Well, that was those guys' opportunity to earn their next contract. And they balled out to their credit. But soon the Nuggets are going to be whole again. They're going to be healthy. And those guys are going to need to play roles for the Nuggets, roles that they were unable to play well in. So if you want to take your chances with Jalen Pickett, go ahead. Call for them to trade Jamal Murray now and elevate Jalen Pickett to the starting point guard position. Tell me Hunter Tyson should be a starter over Christian Brown. Last night was fun. Last night was a blast. Last night was an anomaly. Not only are those guys not being asked to do that on a nightly basis, but I don't think they are capable of throw them out there tomorrow night against Boston and see what happens. Like, I don't want to rain on the parade because I had so much fun watching this team beat the Philadelphia 76ers, but people get carried away. There was a game last year where Jalen Pickett balled out against the Kings. We haven't heard from the guy since. And it's not because he hasn't played. It's because he does not succeed in the role that he was hired to do. And if you think that Jalen Pickett or these guys deserve to play 30 or 40 minutes a night, then hopefully you work for a rival NBA team and you will trade premium draft capital or a quality veteran for these players. Let's not make it more than what it was. Let's not take the fun out of it by making this some big referendum on the previous regime. Calvin Booth identified talented players, but they weren't players that could translate to the roles the Nuggets needed them to. Michael Malone did not play these guys, did not want to play these guys. It was a constant chicken or the egg. Because there were times where you looked at these guys and you say, I don't know if Calvin Booth picked correctly. And then there were other times where they would show something and say, well, Michael Malone's not playing them. That's why they're not developing. But you know the best way to frame all of this? The Nuggets came in with a fresh set of eyes. Ben Tenzer, John Wallace, David Adelman. No Booth, no Malone. What did they decide together? We want Jonas Valanciunas. We want Tim Hardaway. You can take that group and go start your NBA team with it. I'll take the 7 guys who weren't available last night to get the Nuggets closer to a title. Let's not make more of it than what it was. It was a really fun night. It's why we love sports. It's so unpredictable. And the fact that it was at the expense of Joel Embiid just makes it all the better. Story number 2, out of Baltimore. I said yesterday, don't think that John Harbaugh and Todd Bowles are safe. They might yet be fired. And earlier this afternoon, Baltimore did make the call to fire John Harbaugh after 13 seasons. He won a Super Bowl, countless playoff appearances. And to some, and many who have been texting into the show, this is a mistake. I say it is not. I think what has become clear over the last, not just this year, but over the last couple of years with the Baltimore Ravens, is that this team in its current form has run its course. And John Harbaugh is a part of that. And yes, unfortunately for him, John Harbaugh is the most dispensable of all of those parts to the team. They were not going to go any further with the pairing of John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson leading this organization. I think they chose right to say, let's bring in somebody else, fresh set of ideas, maybe more with inclined to the defensive side of the football because that's where we need the most hope. Let's give it another year with Lamar Jackson, a guy that's won multiple MVPs, and let's take our chances. I think that the Ravens are doing the smart thing here. Now, it only becomes smart if they find the right guy. And they're not going to get a guy that is as decorated as John Harbaugh is. But you can't let that be the reason that you stick with something that you look at as an organization and say, this isn't good enough. The Ravens for years have been looking at this and saying, this isn't good enough. And to keep running it back, it makes no sense. And you're just further behind. I don't know who they're going to hire. And I can't sit here and say that unequivocally the guy they hire is going to be more successful than John Harbaugh. All we can debate right now is whether this is the right step to take, the right chance to take for the Baltimore Ravens, and I think that it is. I would go at another round with Lamar Jackson and with a different head coach and see where that gets you. And yes, now John Harbaugh probably becomes the most attractive free agent coach that is out there. And maybe John Harbaugh goes to New York or Arizona or Vegas and is extremely successful. And that will be part of the equation when we look back and discuss whether the Ravens made the right call. But you can't be worried that John Harbaugh will be successful somewhere else if he's not as successful as you need him to be right now. Now, to story number 3. Vance Joseph has been granted interviews or been requested for interviews for a number of teams: Raiders, Cardinals, Giants, Titans, and I fully expect Vance Joseph to get a call from the Baltimore Ravens as well. Is this real? And you can look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Is there a chance that the Broncos could be dealing with what the Eagles have been dealing with, which is we are successful, everybody wants our coaches, we got to replace our coaches, which is not an easy thing to do. I look at this and what Vance Joseph has done. Let me just start there. This is the guy that had 70 hung on his defense not that long ago. He was ready to get run. First of all, he came back to a place where he left, I don't want to say in disgrace, but people were packing his car for him to get out of Denver when he was a head coach. For him to come back and take this job and then to shortly thereafter get 70 put on him, for him to stick with it, to continue to coach this defense up. He has a hand in Nick Bonito becoming what he has, and Jonathan Cooper. And how about Zach Allen and what he has been under Vance Joseph? Vance Joseph, when we talk about the reasons for the Broncos' success, yes, Sean Payton will get the lion's share of the credit, and he'll even get credit for some of the things that Vance Joseph did. You know why? Because Sean Payton chose to have Vance Joseph as the defensive coordinator. He gets a little bit of residual credit. But Vance Joseph is absolutely a huge part of why the Denver Broncos are the number 1 seed. And I think that he has probably learned some lessons from when he was a head coach, and he looked to be completely in over his head here. So he is a worthwhile candidate to at least see. And that's what I would need to hear if I'm an NFL team. What did you learn from that experience with Denver? If we're going to go the retread route, we need to know that you learned some lessons. and how you're going to be better this time around. But beyond that, where's the fit? I mean, here's the kind of the bottom line here. Like, I could say that Vance Joseph deserves a second coaching gig. Who's going to give it to him? Who is he a fit for? Put on your hat of each one of these teams. The Raiders. I thought that would be the most logical institutional knowledge of this division, of Andy Reid's offense, of Sean Payton's offense, of Jim Harbaugh's offense. I could see that. But Cardinals, whether it's Kyler Murray or they draft a quarterback, they need an offensive guy. The Giants have Jackson Dart. They need an offensive guy. Titans have Cam Ward. They need an offensive guy. The musical chairs will go and the music will stop and somebody will not be able to get an offensive-minded head coach. But that's where all of these teams are looking. Right? And even the Raiders, you could argue. I just think that the institutional knowledge might be interesting to the Raiders to have him going up against these coaches that he's game planned against and with for a couple years now. But I think the Raiders could use an offensive-minded head coach. I don't think Vance Joseph is the best candidate out there. But you know, this Baltimore job coming open is interesting. I don't know that the Ravens are one to take a chance, but again, if we're talking about what's the biggest issue with the Ravens, their defense, I actually think that I'm not saying that the Ravens would make Vance Joseph their top candidate, but I think he'd be a more desirable and better candidate for the Ravens than maybe some of these teams that he's interviewing with that either have young quarterbacks or will have young quarterbacks. And you see with Sean Payton and Bo Nix how that's worked. Right? It's a tough racket for defensive coaches. Right? Because they don't work with quarterbacks. But Vance Joseph should absolutely be interviewed by these teams. I'd be curious to hear what Vance Joseph has learned from the last time he was a head coach. And I do think when it comes to Vegas and Baltimore, they are teams that should see some value in talking to Vance Joseph. So we'll see where this goes. But Vance Joseph getting interviews with the Raiders, Cardinals, Giants, and Titans. Haven't seen a lot on Davis Webb. I don't think that's a coincidence. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. More Drive Time Sports coming up here on Extra Sports 1300, as well as our new radio home, while not dropping our old radio home, 740 KVOR. Really appreciate you being a part on either one of those fine radio stations. Scheduled to be joined by Adam Carolla here in just a few minutes, so this will be a short segment. Update you on what's going on in Tampa, the Avalanche in action against the team they won a Stanley Cup against. Avs on an early power play with 15 minutes left in period number one. They're already halfway through. Guess what? They haven't scored on it yet. They do have a shot. I'm not sure if that came on the power play or not. Yeah, the power play is still a thing. There are a couple games here and there where it's like, oh, do they have it? And then it's no. And now we're getting to the point here that I said we were going to get to. And I got there a little bit faster than some of the Avs players as Brent Burns puts a shot on Vasilevsky and it's saved. 33 seconds left in the power play. Nathan McKinnon and some other players have started to voice their concerns over the fact that the power play is not producing. And I said there's a certain point where you can do all the right things and say, we're doing this, we're checking all these boxes. The result is what matters at some point. And now you're hearing Jared Bednar and Nathan McKinnon and some other Avs start to say, the process is great and all, we need the result. And it hasn't been happening consistently as Vasilevsky makes another save, 18 seconds left in the power play. No score between the Avs and Lightning. If there's any more of that game worth bringing you, we'll get it to you right after the Frank Serratori show, which is coming up at 6 on Extra Sports 1300. And then on 740 KVOR, don't forget it's Air Force men's basketball hosting Utah State. Coverage will begin at 6:30. So busy night on these two fine radio stations as I'm watching the Avs here trying to, I don't want to do play-by-play because that's not allowed. I mean, good puck movement from the Avs right now at the very least. Penalty is over and a shot in on Vasilevsky who makes the save. So one power play down, no goals, still early in period number one. Brett brings up, actually, I'm going to save your text, Brett, because I want to give it some more time with Adam Carolla coming up. This from the 571. What about a defensive head coach with a special offensive coordinator? Washington did that last year, had a special season, and now they're probably moving on from Cliff Kingsbury. I think that could be good, but you got who? If you're going to hire a defensive head coach like a Vance Joseph, my very next question is going to be who's going to be your OC, and maybe there's that. There's the Arizona connection with the two of them. Could Vance Joseph be telling these teams, hey, I'm going to dial up Cliff and bring him in to be my offensive coordinator, whether it's, and he hasn't received an invitation yet to interview with Baltimore. But when it comes to Vegas, Arizona, I don't think is going down that road, and some of these other teams. So you bring up a great point, but it just goes back to who is calling your offense. That is what is arguably the most important thing. So if you're going to defensive head coach for one reason or another, doesn't mean you can't have success, to the texter's point. But I got to know who you're bringing in to call plays. And if I'm in a position to draft a quarterback, Arizona, Raiders, or if I have a young quarterback, Tennessee, I got to know who's going to be working with the face of my franchise or the future face of my franchise. 719-247-1313. Adam Carolla scheduled to join me next. He'll be in Colorado Springs this weekend. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. My guest today, you know him very well, an illustrious career in the field of TV, movies. Now the host of a long-running, very popular show, aptly called The Adam Carolla Show. And once in a while, he'll make his way out to our fair city to perform at Looney's Comedy Corner this Friday and Saturday, January 9th and 10th. It is my pleasure to welcome onto the program Adam Carolla. Adam, great to have you. How have you been?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, fan of the podcast. Obviously, you've done a great job with that, but you dabble in a different world than sports. I'm curious how engaged you are with sports, given that you spend a lot of time dabbling in kind of the political commentary and the real world stuff, so to speak.
I love sports. It was always my first love. I love football. Well, that was, my first love. And I was involved quite a bit. I was like all city high school football player, and I was a boxing coach later in life and that kind of stuff. So I've always been around sports my whole life and really attracted to it.
And who are the teams that you are rooting for the most these days?
Well, I'm an LA guy, and I was always a football guy. So I was always a Rams fan. I'm not as big a baseball fan as I am a football fan. I just don't appreciate the sport as much as I appreciate football. Although, this last World Series, I don't think you can get any better than that. Mm-hmm. But the Lakers, I'm an LA guy, so I was born and raised out here. So, I just sort of keep it simple. Just kind of root for the LA teams.
There you go. Well, at least you're from there. Because as you know, there are a lot of people that are donning Dodger gear or Laker gear these days that may not have grown up with ties to the team. Your thoughts on the soon to come, I would think, retirement of LeBron and what he has been meant to you as a Laker fan.
Well, LeBron's a great player, and so I like him on the court, but he's also sort of a race hustler too, so I don't really like him for that. So his politics, I don't like him at all for, but his playing, I certainly appreciate him for.
Yeah, and do you think that has ultimately, the comparisons between him and Michael Jordan, do you think that it has hurt him in that comparison that he's been so outspoken and obviously outspoken on one side of the aisle, so to speak? Do you think that has hurt him in these debates on whether he's actually greater than Michael Jordan was?
Everything kind of bleeds into everything. Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame, even though he leads NLB in hits, So why? Because of something he did not on the baseball field per se, So it's all going to sort of, OJ got his Heisman taken back. It's things off the field or off the court are inevitably going to bleed onto the court and onto the field. And so if you're going to do that kind of stuff, by the way, it's fine. Muhammad Ali did it, and we like him even more. So, it's not a one-way street per se, but I just think if you're going to be an athlete and you're going to start wading into politics, then it is going to affect the way people think of you, and it could be good or it could be bad. But look, I would say the same with the late night show host.
Adam Carolla, my guest. He'll be at Looney's Comedy Corner this Friday and Saturday right here in Colorado Springs. I'm curious, when you're on your show, how much does what you do on the show show up on stage and maybe vice versa?
I am a touring stand-up headliner, and I have an act that's somewhere between an hour, maybe an hour and 10, 15 minutes, just kind of depending on what kind of mood I'm in. And I write jokes and I work them and I figure them out and I hone them and I get up there and I tell them. I don't do that much crowd work. I don't tell, stories from the old days. I just do stand up. And I think a lot of people are surprised sometimes. They might think I'm not a stand up and I'm doing something different. But over the years, I just decided if you're going to be a stand up, be a stand up. Write jokes, figure out angles and opinions and points of views, commit it to memory, figure it out, and then get up there and work it. And that's what I do when I come to your town.
Why has there, because it just, and you would know better than I would, but just from my standpoint, there's so many more comics that I think are trying to do the crowd work. Like it feels like it's more pronounced now than it used to be. And do you think that there is a reason for that? I kind of maybe think, is it social media related that they're trying to get that?
Well, it's a couple fold. One is when you're doing crowd work, you're not burning material, as they say. So you're not taking your stuff, putting it up there and burning it off because everyone's seen it. That you got to come up with something new. Comics get kind of protective about their material and burning it off. And it's really hard to gather up a new fresh hour after your last 1 hour special aired, and now we need a new hour. So they don't like throwing their stuff up on the internet and having everyone see it and burning it off that way. So that's one reason why they do the crowd work. They're not burning material. The other is, it's the internet. That's what people seem to be sharing. That's what people seem to be, it's in vogue. It's of the day, of the time. And that's what seems to be shareable and getting clicks. So they'll just go to whatever's shareable and getting clicks.
Well, then why aren't you worried about that, Adam? You're burning the material and things like that.
I don't know. I'm not as precious about stuff as I think a lot of comedians are. Also, I've found with audiences that they want a funny show, and sometimes you go up there and you go, "Oh, I told this one last time I was here." Well, that was a year and a half ago, and they were drunk. Go ahead, tell. And you can't do that with an hour. You can't do that with your whole act. But if there's a couple of greatest hits in there, stuff you've told before, stuff that's older, stuff that works, but you told it last time you were in town, no one seems to care if you tell it this time either.
Mm-hmm. Adam Carolla, my guest at Looney's Comedy Corner here in Colorado Springs, Friday and Saturday night, January 9th and January 10th. So, given what we were just discussing, do you think that comedy, I'll just open it up. What place is comedy? Because we had cancel culture, obviously, that was right around the pandemic. Kind of seems like it's calmed down a little bit, but where, as a comic and a very successful one for a number of years, where do you look at comedy being in the year 2026 now?
It's a good time to be funny. It's a good time to be truthful. I think we went so hard for a while in the sort of PC left direction that we've overcorrected a little bit. We're now pushing hard and raising eyebrows and all that kind of stuff. And I'm all for it. I think, if you're good, if you're talented, if you have something to say, if you're funny, you'll be fine. If you don't have any of those things, you probably shouldn't be talking into a microphone. But I don't really think there's a type of comedy right now, just like I don't really think there's a hairstyle right now. There's just whatever. There's guys with shaved heads. There's guys with man buns. There's guys with mullets. And there's guys with crew cuts. And it's like, whatever works on you, go do it. And if you're good, if it works, it's going to work, So I don't think there's a style. There's not a dress style. Not everyone has to wear the same designer jeans. There's not a hairstyle. There's not a music style. Music's just sort of all over the place. It's like there used to be 3 or 4 beers, Budweiser, Coors, Old Milwaukee. Now there's 500,000 beers, I mean, I'll try a beer I never heard of every other weekend. That's not something that would have happened in the past.
Well, that's where that
rules.
Yeah, that's you're coming to the right place. If you want a variety of beers, I think we have every one of the beers here in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, and it's fun and it's nice. So I don't really think there are any more, here's the kind of comedian I am, or is this a good time or a bad time? It's a good time to be funny, and it's a good time to be a good beer.
There you go. Good time to be a Rams fan. What are you thinking about them in the playoffs?
Yeah, they really, well, it's funny until the Atlanta game, but they essentially lost 2 or 3 games that they shouldn't have lost this year, and then they lost to Atlanta. But they really shouldn't have lost. They lost by like blocked field goals and late game heroics and stuff. They could have got through the season with 1 loss pretty much. So I think they're good. I don't think it really matters. I mean, Seattle looks really tough, and the Rams could have beat them last time they played, and they'll play them tough and that kind of stuff. But Seattle looks tough. I don't know. Home field, who cares? SoFi's brand new. I think, and also, they got a quarterback who's been there and done that. It's not going to be phased. I think they can definitely get out and beat. Who are they playing? The Panthers on their first one?
Yeah. A lot of people are saying that the Rams are the other team in the NFC that gets a bye besides Seattle because they play Carolina.
Right. So yeah. So I certainly like their chances against Carolina. Although Rams are like traditionally a team, they can beat a good team and lose to a lesser team pretty easily. So you never really know. But I like McVay, and I think they got for considering they're 5th.
Yeah,
I think I feel pretty good about that.
Knowing that you are about to step into Broncos country, but I know that you are a truth teller above everything else, Adam Carolla. What is your thought about the Broncos? How much have you seen from them? They haven't played the Rams this year, obviously different conferences, but obviously people around here are pretty hyped up about what the Broncos are doing. What have you seen from them?
I like the Broncos. I've always liked the Broncos. I like their throwback uniforms. Maybe it's nostalgic. Bo Nick seems good, and I watched the Elway special, so that was the doc was kind of interesting for Elway. Broncos are a good team. I don't know. I mean, Seattle looks just so damn tough. NFL has so much parity now that really anybody can beat anybody at any time. I don't. There's so much more parity now than there used to be. You used to be able to, when the Steelers were playing the Houston Oilers, you could count on a Steelers win. I don't know what wins to count on anymore. Who knows which you just take the Steelers. Like, I don't know what Steelers team's going to show up to what game. So I root for Denver. I like them. I've always kind of liked them, and they've been blown out of a couple Super Bowls back in the early day, and I always felt bad for Denver back in the day. So I was kind of rooted for Denver, just like I used to root for the Patriots before they started winning all the time. I mean, I don't mean this time around. I mean, Brady Belichick era. They had a Super Bowl appearance where they got blown out, and then just basically nothing for a long time. And I used to kind of root for them. I was like, yeah, let them win.
Yeah. We'll see if people feel that way. If the Patriots go through the Broncos at some point, people around here who despise the Patriots as much as any fan base may not be like Drake May and company, but they are a more likable version of the Patriots compared to years past, aren't they, Adam?
I totally Vrabel. You gotta like Vrabel.
Yeah,
you just gotta like that guy. You didn't have to like Belichick.
Mm-hmm.
And Drake May seems great. I don't know, who's the Broncos' first game with. Or they got to buy. They got to buy.
So that's what we're discussing today. Who would you rather the Broncos play? I think that you mentioned the Steelers earlier. I think that's kind of the consensus that the Steelers would be the preferred first matchup. But yeah, Broncos are sitting back this week and letting it all play out.
Versus who? Who's their Steelers versus?
Steelers play the Texans in the 4-5 in the AFC. So it's kind of the same deal. The Texans are the 5 seed, but everyone kind of thinks that Houston's going to win.
Yeah, I would say I would take the Steelers if I was a Bronco fan, and that you kind of know what you're going to get. And the Texans, while not a great team, could light it up. They could get hot.
Yeah. And they've been hot, 9 in a row that they've won? Yeah. So.
Yeah, I would take – I mean, look, the Steelers got – the guy missed a field goal. That's why they're there. And not a long field goal either.
Right.
So, they don't even need to be there. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Famer, no doubt, but he's, 42 or something. So, if I'm a Denver fan – I would feel pretty comfortable about either one of those teams coming to Mile High, but if the Steelers showed up to Mile High, I'd be pretty comfortable with that. But remember, the Steelers are only going to be there if they beat the Texans, right?
Well, if they beat the Texans and if New England and Jacksonville both win. So.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Because if like Buffalo, for instance, and that's the team I keep looking at, I don't think anyone wants to play Josh Allen. But if like Buffalo or LA win, the other LA team, the ones that are paying Stan Kroenke rent there and out at SoFi, if they win, that's who the Broncos would end up playing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
very complicated.
It is.
Either way,
yeah.
Broncos at home I'd feel pretty comfortable with that.
All right. If the Rams go to the Super Bowl, is Adam Carolla going to be in Santa Clara in a month or so?
No, I've been to a few Super Bowls in my day, and I'll tell you what, especially now with the security, somewhere between the security and having a 100-inch TV at home, I'll take the 4K and the 100-inch and standing holding a beer in my bathrobe.
That is not a bad way to go. Adam, this was fun. Appreciate you taking time, and we'll see you this weekend. Very cool that you're coming out to Colorado Springs. A lot of people are excited to see you at Looney's Comedy Corner the 9th and the 10th. So welcome, or preemptively welcome to Colorado Springs, and hopefully we get to chat again soon.
I hope so. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. That is the incomparable, the legendary Adam Carolla, my guest here on Drive Time Sports. Again, he'll be at Looney's Comedy Corner this Friday and Saturday, the 9th and the 10th. The address, do we do addresses anymore? Or do we just punch in your GPS? And you should know Looney's, it's right there on Academy anyway. You could go to LooneysCC.com, LOONEESCC.com, or just Google it. Like there are like older ways that we would like promote things, and it's like, now you just type in Looney's Comedy Corner and you find it. But that's where he'll be at the 9th and the 10th. I believe both shows are at 7 o'clock. I know certainly the Saturday one is, but check it out. Looney's Comedy Corner. Big get for the folks at Looney's. Good job by them. Looking forward to it. And that was great. Now, I don't get that long with a lot of guests, especially somebody of Adam Carolla's stature. One of the most popular podcasts in America that he hosts, the Adam Carolla Show. So that's how we're going to wrap it up today. I am out of time. Again, the Frank Serratori Show is coming up at the top of the hour on Extra Sports 1300. A little bit of Mark Levin on KVOR, and then it will be Air Force men's basketball taking on Utah State. I appreciate your patronage, and I will talk to you tomorrow here on both Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR.